So, while on the Glastonbury festival a few days ago, I'm sure everybody has seen it, one of the performers decided to start chanting death to the IDF, free Palestine, Palestine will be free, and all that. Now, this was broadcasted live by BBC, who is now trying to apologize for it, saying, oh, maybe we should have shut it down, but, too little, too late. So, and with all that, there is a big social media campaign now. Everybody is standing behind this guy, and there is a lot of pushback coming from some of the governments, and some people calling for him to get arrested. Um, we'll talk about all of that today on the Daily Objective. Joining me today are Marco and Richard, and we'll watch the video of him, but I'll go to you, Marco. Uh, yeah, what do you make of this? Have you heard? I don't know how known this festival is in the UK, but yeah, have you known about this guy before?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I'll stop you there. Don't talk about the guy. I don't care about the guy. I don't know who the guy is, but he's an idiot. Uh, so this event is actually called Glastonbury, and it's a well-established event where it used to be like about music, about people going to a field, getting covered in mud, and having a jolly good time, like little piglets in mud, listening to some music. It's effectively a Woodstock, a poor man Woodstock, really. However, when I say poor man, I mean the ticket nowadays cost about for over $400, and it's mainly attended by urban lefty middle class. So and it's has become, especially in the last few years, a a forge of leftist activity. They gave lots of space to the climate wackos, or social rebellions, all these kind of people. So there's nothing new about the lefty controversy thrown up by these people. What is new is that they have embraced full hands, wide open, the Palestinian cause. They've totally taken the lefty agenda, the extreme lefty agenda, and they're running with it, literally running with it. So it's all over the place. All the people will show mostly Palestinian flags, and all this kind of stuff. So we're seeing lots of animosity towards anything which is not Palestinian, i.e., Jewish, and they cannot hide their continuous activism against Israel itself. And the acts themselves are notoriously controversial people. People who already expressed anti-Semitic, literally anti-Semitic views against, taking a clear position in the conflict. And so, yeah, the BBC should have known about this. They should have kept an eye on it. If anything else, in order to cover the arse of the government, it's their government right now in power, the lefty government. The BBC is a massively left organization, so even the political nuance is not there anymore. They kind of try to put some stop on it, but they are so deep into it in the BBC that they totally lost track of what they're doing.
Yeah, and if I can add to it, Glastonbury's massive. It's been going for years. Some of the biggest stars across the world play there frequently. I mean, two of the stars on this year's lineup included names like Rod Stewart and Neil Young, and obviously much younger artists who I've never heard of, but most people have. So it is massive for sure, but it is also like everything in the modern age, a massive activist, fly trap as well. It attracts them all there, and of course, a lot of the setup from it and the organisers, they're very keen to do that. It's held on a farm called Worthy Farm, for goodness sake. And the guy who set it up, the farmer originally set it up, says it stands for something. What it stands for is open to debate. Sometimes it stands for whatever's in popular vogue at the time, and I think that's what's relevant here when talking about this. Because I mean, quite honestly, is it really a shock that the supporters of a death cult, chant for death? I mean, it is a shock in the sense that you're not supposed to say that out loud. You're not supposed to blow apart the distinction between saying free Palestine and kill all the Jews. You're only supposed to say the first half of it. And here you've got somebody saying overtly and inciting the crowd overtly to chant for death to the IDF and, of course, by inference to Jews. And it is shocking in the sense that they're revealing that, and of course all of the media pundits, all of the politicians are suddenly coming out with enormous shock at what they already knew was the case, and that of course is disingenuous and at best, and is frankly quite repugnant at worst. And all of that's in there. Plus, of course, you've got the fact that this is a weekend festival with 5 stages, and it's broadcast, and much of it's live streamed by the BBC, so it's shown live, and that's a part of the controversy here. And it's also the fact that, of course, it's shown by the BBC, which is a national broadcaster, for whom you can we can get into how you pay for it, but essentially anybody watching TV in the UK, live TV, has to buy a TV license that funds the BBC. So essentially it's a big BBC tax that is used to promote this kind of hate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to go into the BBC thing later, but first I want to stay a little bit longer about, yeah, the general sort of like people being surprised at this. It's, we named the episode 1930s Glastonbury because as much as people might say it's over exaggerating, but the fact is, this is how it starts. This is not surprising. We have already seen Jews getting hunted across Europe. We talked about Amsterdam, where people were targeted just simply because they were, not even because they were necessarily Jewish, because they came in supporting an Israeli football team. So this is already happening. People are sort of coming out against the Jews. And yeah, so before we go a bit further into that, I think we should watch the video as much as it is really bad, but yeah, let's just 30 seconds.
Free, 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 free. Alright, but have you heard this one though? Death, death to the IDF. 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 Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
Yeah, so the artist's name is Bob Billen. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it because I'm not sure if we mentioned it yet.
It's pronounced cretin.
Oh, that's a good one. And yeah, so he first comes in saying "Free Palestine," and then it goes, have you heard this one, kids? And starts chanting that to the IDF, which is again, in the full because I don't think this is probably like the first time these kinds of festivals are doing something like this, but the fact is this is chanting death to a military organization that is protecting the only Jewish state in the world. Not only that, is actively fighting against its enemies, against the actual Nazis. I mean, this is akin to during World War II there being like a concert in the UK talking about death to the RAF or the Royal Army. It's these are the people who are defending the Western civilization, and you are calling for the death of them. And there is also a separate part that they might be trying to hide. They are just calling for the death to the military force, right? Not to Jews in general. But when you go into the fact that pretty much every single Jewish person in Israel either has been in the IDF or is in the IDF since they have the national service, they are actively advocating for pretty much killing any Jewish person. Do you think, when somebody gets inspired by this and they go after Jews, do you think they'll check with the people if they were actually in the IDF or not? No. It's not like The same as in Nazi Germany. They didn't ask if they were practicing Jews, if they were actually practicing the sort of the religion of Judaism, right? It's just you're Jewish. We decided you're Jewish, and that is enough to call for violence against you. That is enough to kill you. Marco?
Well, I must admit I'm shocked. I hadn't seen the whole video. I've just seen the bit where he's chanting about the IDF thing. I mean, this guy is clearly a racist bastard. He's just playing to his crowd of racists. And what's really outrageous here that it's not just doing the usual anti-Semitic stuff, the pro-Palestinian, so-called pro-Palestinian propaganda stuff, because we see that in the street every day. It's been normalized now, so he probably thinks it's cool to do it, it's okay to do it, especially in front of a crowd of people who agree with him. So that's why he does it at that point. But when he starts saying kill the IDF, that's plain and simple incitement to violence. I don't care if it's protest. I don't care if it's done in an environment where it's actually a private property, a private event, so he's free to say what he likes. Here, he's actually inciting violence. And what really hurts me is the bunch of idiots that chants back, kill the IDF. Because it's fine if you're stupid enough to believe the Hamas and the Palestinian cause is actually got nothing to do with civilization. Thinking that in itself that's a good thing is just condemns you to hell in my eyes. But to actually incite and call for the death of a human being in, by the way, the only civilized country in the Middle East, that's incitement to violence. That's a crime, even under the very loose and two-tier kind of justice here in the UK. That's a crime. It's plainly wrong to do that. And again, the crowds. You have a bunch of people here who have what Ayn Rand calls the wide open mind, quite happy to repeat and offer themselves in sacrifice to the first dictator or the first idiot that comes along with a couple of rhyming slangs and give themselves to them. And they're quite happy to repeat effectively a crime, commit a crime because their leader told them. I mean, frankly, they know who's present at that event because it's a ticketed event, and they should use the extent of the law we have, the little law left here in Britain, to identify who chanted back and frankly bang them into prison, because we've seen in previous events when further the right section of protests were involved. Okay, it was criminal actions and stuff like that, but when the right wing is protesting, they get banged up in prison straight away, even for a tweet that lasted 4 hours. This is a proper call for death of people in a civilized country, and it shouldn't stand at all. This guy should be banged up straight away, and the people who chanted back should follow pretty soon.
I think it's worth saying that this guy was on stage for like an hour, and this particular bit with the death to the IDF chant was about I think it was about 20 minutes in, so midway through, with another 40 minutes afterwards. The BBC continued to show the live stream of it for the rest of his set. Now, following him on stage was the stupid Irish band, who I'm not going to name, but is named after. It's been in the news repeatedly. The one that's one of the lead singer, I think, one of the band members, is currently being investigated for showing a Hezbollah flag at a gig back in November on stage, and that's the band named after the IRA's favourite form of violent punishment. But they were due to be on next. And they were on next, and the BBC had decided in advance, under duress, they initially were going to show it. They decided they weren't going to show that one live. But they knew full well what the nature of this guy was beforehand, and the nature of his kind of lyrics in the past, and the fact that he is, it's punk rap. It would be a way of describing it in a sense. In a sense, it's nothing new, because a lot of it, the kind of lyrics and stuff about killing the Queen and all that kind of stuff, takes you back to the 1970s. It's about as rebellious as knitting a sweater. But still, it comes in the line of that kind of stuff. And of course, you know, other things that the lyrics call for is if your landlords raise the rent, get a gun and stuff like that. So that's the kind of nature of the guy we're talking about. So you know, he is a somebody who deliberately is provocative, but in a sense, there's nothing provocative about this in the sense that this is the common culture at the moment. This is the Palestinian flag is the flag seen everywhere. What would actually be controversial would be displaying the Israeli flag. Quite honestly, what would be controversial would be saying that, you know, climate change has been exaggerated, or that, you know, a woman is an adult female. All of those would be controversial within the context of the current culture, or even on the Glastonbury stage. So in a sense, you know, this is a representation. This music festival is still a representation of what's going on in Britain. Now, at the same time, I don't want to suggest that everybody in Britain is you know, waving a Palestinian flag, or even everybody at that event, or in the wider context of Glastonbury, would chant back such hideous words. But enough vocal people are clearly doing so to represent a significant amount of buy-in to the sentiment that's being expressed, and that in itself is pretty disgusting, but no surprise.
Yeah, and when it comes to well, first of all, I really like what you said about sort of. Wait, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. First of what you said about yeah, this idea of sort of like punk rock or punk rap in this instance being sort of supposed to be about rebellion, but the fact is these are conventional views. Being pro-Palestinian is conventional views. Being a socialist is conventional now. This is the norm. Do you know what is actually radical? Do you know what is actually rebellious? Being a capitalist, being pro-Israel, that is the outside the norm. That is what will get you canceled. That is what will make people go after you. It is because look at social media. This guy is now applauded. This is like and we'll go to that. But first, I want to cover sort of like the law parts because if this was in America, I think this would most likely uphold the Brandenburg test, which basically says talks about how sort of speech can be limited if it's directed to incite or produce imminent lawless action or likely to produce or incite such an action, which would basically means it needs to be a bit more sort of kill that guy over there right now, which this wouldn't, I think, would sort of go through this test. But this is not in America. We are in the UK that has first has no First Amendment, and second has many laws on the books prohibiting free speech, including I think one. I think Marco, you mentioned it. One law that I think goes back to 1982, which talks about sort of inciting racial hatred, which is which would make it so that sort of speech that produces that racial hatred or incites it is enough to warrant basically either a jail time or I think definitely a jail time. And there were people in the UK arrested for it. As you mentioned, there was, I can't remember the woman's name, but if you remember,
Yeah, Lucy Connolly.
yeah, so she I believe she had like a tweet which was bad. It wasn't nice thing to say. She deleted it later, but she was still basically the government went after her and she ended up basically accepting a deal and ended up I think getting more than a year in prison or something like that. So
It's more like 2 years, isn't it? It's
Nearly three.
oh, really?
or 31 months or something like that.
Oh wow. So okay, so even more. Yeah, so when it comes to that, chanting that to the IDF to a crowd when there is one specific group that will be in the IDF or is very likely to be, I think would absolutely sort of go after the same thing. So as much as I do not like limits on free speech, I do not like the sort of well, I guess you have the name for it in the UK, the two-tier justice system, where some people are being prosecuted and some people are not. If law should be, then it should be applied equally. And if it's unjust law, then you get rid of the law. You don't use it only against specific people. So, uh, Yeah, we can go a bit further, but anything you'd like to add on that, Marco?
Yeah, that's exactly the danger of non-objective law that can be interpreted according to the need or the ruler, that can be used to bash one side against the other. And frankly, you mentioned the laws against incitement to violence. Well, here, how their leader, the prime minister, actually, we haven't seen from him or haven't heard from him, but his press office put out a tweet where he actually says that the comments were despicable hate speech. Now, hate speech is it's part of recent legislation that effectively you can be charged for hate speech under certain circumstances if you do it to incite violence, racial or religious grounds, stuff like that. Now, the current prime minister was a former chief of the Crown Prosecution Service. So if he says hate speech, he should actually know exactly what he's talking about. So this guy, I'm looking forward to see the rapper in jail very soon. But what really get on my nerves really is that a few hours after the incident, somebody on GB News interviewed Wes Streeting, which is the one of the Prime Minister wannabes, the current head of the Department of Health. It's the Secretary of State for the Department of Health, which who described the event as a comments designed to as attention seeking. So what the guy chanting on the stage, "Kill the IDF," apparently is only attention seeking. And the people who replied are just drunk revelers. So I agree with Richard, not all of them did it. Just a chunk of them did it. Just a chunk of them had the Palestinian flags. But you cannot dismiss this event as just drunk revelers and attention seeking. This is incitement to violence directed to a specific group, i.e., Jewish people defending themselves against the monster of Hamas. I mean, you don't hear these lefties, do-gooders going after the Iranian regime. You don't hear that they're going after Hamas. Don't hear them going after any kind of crime or monsters across the world. You don't hear them going against the Russians' aggressors. You don't hear them even supporting the Muslims Uyghur in China. You haven't heard them at all because China clearly trumps them, doesn't it? The two-facedness of these people is just beyond belief. And day by day, they're actually showing their true colors. And all they are, cheerleaders for tyrants all over the world. And, what do you expect us to do? Well, at some point, there's going to be a big confrontation, either political confrontation or physical confrontation. I hope it's going to be political. But if things carry on this way, this set of contradiction that we are living with will explode somehow.
Yeah, and just to add sort of like a quick thing, talking about, it was just drunkards who would sort of yell back. There were people in the crowd with Palestinian flag. We've seen people, what people chant with a pro-Palestinian flag. Why would you ever sort of think, especially when somebody is in the crowd, especially when you can sort of get away with it? Why would you be surprised that anybody would yell such a thing?
Yeah. And some of the comments the BBC have made since, that they should have pulled the live stream during the performance. We regret this did not happen. Lovely use of the passive tense there. In other words, we ballsed up, except did they balls up or did they actually know that they were going to do that right from the beginning? Because a lot of this is fake apology, fake pretense that you were caught by surprise, fake. I mean, it's quite common for things to be in delay by like 10 seconds when they're alive. A live showing of something so that the plug can be pulled before something is aired, even if you choose to show it completely live in the first place. And frankly, if you're showing in mid-afternoon or whatever, loads of music performers on the stage live to the whole nation, they could frankly say anything at any time. And so they're constantly apologizing every year, but also loving it at the same time because it gives them the notoriety, it gives them the standing which they don't have any other time, the BBC, which is people actually talking about them. I think the match with what Marco quoted there from Wes Streeting, the health secretary, in the way in which they play things down. The BBC referred to it as quote comments that were deeply offensive, talking about what was said on the stage, or also they said quote certain statements made during the set were highly offensive. They say in another thing. Now these are comments and statements. Apparently, they're no longer chants. They're just sort of side remarks. It would seem in the way they try and belittle it afterwards. Yet, if this were a different kind of rally, if these were chants that were being chanted by some terribly right-wing organisation, for example, and were inciting chants back, they would most certainly be called chants, and they would most certainly be called incitements to violence. So certainly there's inconsistency, not just in the application of the law, but in how things are reported, how things are flagged up, how things are apologised for afterwards. But of course, the BBC is, to be honest, on the same page as the guy on the stage. I mean, the fact that, for example, one of his lyrics talks about burning the Union Jack and stuff like, or wiping his ass, I think, with the Union Jack is one of the lyrics within one of his songs. But the BBC presenters themselves, the news presenters, mock the Union Jack within the newsroom in some of their broadcasts and have done in the past. So belittling the UK or denigrating the UK is part of their DNA. Frankly, the BBC hates Britain and has for many decades. So they really are on the same page in terms of their outlook. And of course, lots of what they claim they apologise for is actually what they're quite happy went out in the first place, and they couldn't find the button to stop it for 40 minutes.
Yeah, and so I do want to go into BBC a bit more, but first, thank you, PC, for the super chat. He says he cannot go to United States. I think this is the CBP. It's the border. What is it? Customs Border Protection. Yeah, we can also talk about that. His visa got revoked. We also have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much, and a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. But before we go further, let me remind people that tomorrow the Daily Objective will be live on stage in Boston, actually in this specific room, so you can try to look around it. It's going to be here. So I'm putting the link in the description. People who haven't still signed up yet but are in the area or would like to drive a bit can still sign up. But it's first come, first serve. So there are limited seats and there are also limited slots. So make sure to sign up as soon as possible. And in another way, we also have a newsletter. So using the link in the description and in the chat, you can sign up for our newsletter so you know about these events when they're happening and also plan for them in the future. Okay, let's move on to, okay. Let's cover a bit more the BBC thing, because yeah, I mean, the fact that this did happen and it wasn't sort of like canceled or nothing happened sort of puts a question like, at what point would you, like, what would he have to say for you to finally like turn the button off, for you to finally say, okay, maybe this shouldn't be broadcasted, we shouldn't simply allow this to happen, because yeah, I mean, I think I have some of their statements as well. Yeah, the team were dealing with a live situation, but with hindsight, we should have pulled the stream during the performance. We regret that this did not happen. Well, I'm looking forward to next time this happens, that they will actually pull it. And, you know, I understand that this is live, but somebody is in charge of making sure something like this doesn't happen. And whoever it was decided that, no, this is not enough to pull it down, which I mean, after everything we've talked about BBC, the documentary they tried to do in Gaza with Hamas members, the reporting we've seen, the anti-Israel bias we've talked about, there's so many things that, you know, at some point you start asking yourself questions. Are these mistakes, Marco?
It's clearly not a mistake. There is no way it's a mistake. The BBC, you know, it's the propaganda arm of Hamas here in the UK. They've continuously refuse to call them terrorists. They always call them combatant from Hamas. They've been mad in controversy because they use anti-Semitic and people who post the anti-Semitic stuff as the correspondents in the Arabic channel. The news, the BBC News side is covered. They use many journalists which actually been found in contempt of making anti-Semitic comments. They've been for the last since October 7th. They've been called out for being on the side of Hamas constantly, not by one person, but a number of bits of research, various institutions, and even people within the BBC themselves. Are pointing out that the BBC is not unbiased on the side. So they knew this event was going to be controversial, if anything else, because you have the list of the bands attending months in advance. They knew one of the bands was so controversial that they actually decided not to show them, the Irish band. And despite that, they refused to keep an eye on what's next. I mean, Richard pointed out, usually when there is a live event, whoever is in charge of the broadcasting has got a big button that they can press and effectively beep. They've got a 10-second delay before it's broadcasted, so they could beep out the bit that they want to effectively make sure it doesn't go out. Did they do this? No. Did they even worry about anything of this? No, because they knew that some stuff would have gone out, and they were quite happy for it. They are part of the propaganda. They agree with them. The people at the BBC agree with what's happening in Glastonbury. They agree with what happened October 7th. Not many of them came out to condemn Hamas, and most of them are actually pro-Hamas. They showed it over and over and over again. So no, there's no way this is an accident. There's no way.
And of course, this is part of a trend as well, isn't it? Of people saying things ahead of live sporting events or other music events. The other presenters within the BBC, including those who up until recently were making sports reports, like Gary Lineker, for example, constantly tweeting about Palestine, the way in which the BBC uses Hamas propaganda all the time, and at first. Its first port of call is to go to that and talk about the Hamas health ministry all the time. I think it's been the normalization, the drip, drip, drip effect, which is what has fueled so many of the people attending, the kind of marches that you get in London, and of course, vocalizing the pro-Palestinian agenda as a result at this sort of concert. So, I mean, all of that's been the case. I think some of what the Glastonbury have said, they said it, the Glastonbury themselves said it crossed the line. But always after the event, they know who's coming. I mean, at the back of the screen, when this guy's on stage, written on the big electronic screen, is written Free Palestine. The UN have called it a genocide. The BBC calls it a conflict, in inverted commas. Now, this is what the BBC and their apologists always do. They always pretend that the BBC is neutral or it's on the other side. And one example of it saying this is an example of it being balanced when it clearly isn't. But it allows them to pretend that the BBC has no opinions, which is the line you're supposed to buy, which is frankly ridiculous to anybody with eyes to see and a brain to think. But that's the line that's peddled out so often. And of course, there's no forgetting that this is the contrast, of course, with the Nova Music Festival and what actually happened at the Nova Music Festival. The barbarity and hideous nature of that. And if paragliders were coming out of the air in the fields of Somerset, those people would be this very same kind of people to be mown down and chased across the fields until they died. So that is what they are supporting, and it's their lack of context, their lack of knowledge, and frankly their lack of knowledge of history, which is also prevalent here. The fact that all of the things they support, little bubble reactions, feeling-based reactions, never thinking. It's all emotional, and of course without any knowledge of how things fit together and of history itself, in order to understand what it is they're supporting and in what context.
Yeah, so I want to discuss a few of the consequences that have happened. First, somebody in the chat is yelling, listening to these censorship hooligans. We believe in free speech. I mean, okay, let's unite and establish free speech in Britain. The fact is, there is not an actual principle of free speech right now in Britain. There are laws on the books limiting free speech. And I think what this guy said would have breaking those laws. If you want to get people around and getting rid of those laws, which I don't think the general British populations would be about, because it would be things like racial hatred, hate speech is part of free speech, or at least should be part of free speech. It's not currently right now in the UK. And people in the UK, they passed these laws, and and people have been prosecuted with these laws, and there haven't been that much outrage about it because people generally agree with the principle of limiting free speech. This is the fact in the UK right now. I am absolutely for establishing free speech, but the fact is, when you have certain laws, you cannot apply them indirectly. You cannot have certain bad laws and then just try to apply them against people you do not like. I'd rather have a sort of unjust law applied objectively than a completely sort of like subjective law that we only use to go after the bad guys, or what we call bad guys. But to bring in a few more things, so yeah, as somebody mentioned in the chat, his visa to the US was canceled after this, as well as his talent agency has dropped him over these comments, which I think absolutely, well, first with the talent agency, of course, absolutely makes sense. Why would you ever want somebody like this representing you? When it comes to visa cancellation, I mean, sometimes there are consequences. This is what sometimes happens. And not to mention, I'm not necessarily sure if you want such a person to simply go in, who is coming in with already intentions of sort of like inspire this hatred, even if they might not necessarily break the law exactly, but have a potentiality. So I think that's sort of on a different scale. But I think both of those actions absolutely make sense. And none of those are limits on free speech. It's a private company. They can do what they want. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, talent. It's a stretch, isn't it, with this guy? But anyway, we like people who have opposite idea to us. I like to be challenged, and I like when people make protests without disrupting my life, possibly. So that's all good and fine. I mean, we welcome that. What we don't welcome is when somebody starts calling for the death of the Israeli Defense Force members. That's a very clear message that you send out there. So that's fine. If you're protesting, if you're opposing my ideas, if you want to come up with other alternative ideas, if you want, I'm happy to debate. And I'm 99% sure I will actually prove you wrong, because unless you're on the side of reason, reality, and a morality that allows for life on Earth, then you're bound to be wrong. So the debate is good, but this is not debate. To paint this as an issue of free speech is just being a fascist bully, really, because this is not about free speech at all. We're not saying this guy shouldn't say anything like this. We were saying when it comes to calling for the death of somebody, and then we've seen what happens when people call for death. We've seen the two members of the embassy in New York City, in DC, being killed because people are chanting and making this kind of assertions like acceptable, which weren't only a few years ago. So we know that there are consequences to this kind of cause, especially from somebody who's in a position of fame, somebody who stands in front of it. Some feeble mind might well be inspired to go out and do something stupid. So they know that this kind of stuff is dangerous, but they still do it. Hiding behind the free speech. The very free speech, then they are very, very quick at calling off when it suits them. They are the people who counsel people who thinking that sex and gender are two different things. If you think that a man with a will can call himself a woman, well, that's controversial for them. They will cancel you if you say that. If you say that I'm not sure about the climate change business is made worse by human activity, they will cancel you for that. And on you go. So they call for free speech when it suits them. Right now, as you pointed out, here in the UK, we haven't got free speech. We were much freer, 50 years ago than we are now, definitely. Certainly in the last 20 years, things have gone down massively. But they don't want free speech. They don't want freedom. They want some dictator, possibly the flavor that they prefer, to tell them what to do or what to think. And they want us to be silenced by their mummy and daddies as well.
I think it was pointed out by Rand, and I'm summarizing here, but the bad ideas are best answered by good ideas. And it's debate that is the essential way of getting to truth, isn't it? In terms of challenging those bad ideas, certainly. And what we've seen from the BBC is things like, referring to hindsight as their excuse for what happened, which is ludicrous. We've heard like the bands like the Irish one, which also had to apologise for inciting people to kill their local member of parliament, had to apologise for it. But they talk about frequently that they're a satirical band as well, and you should be able to understand what's a joke and what isn't. But of course, that becomes muddy waters and mealy-mouthed excuses afterwards, particularly when two politicians were killed in recent years by hideous individuals for different ideologies, but incited to violence under those ideologies. I think the problem here is to understand where the UK is in many ways, and the fact that it isn't like America, and it's got such a long way to go before it could even get to being like America in terms of understanding free speech. And it's the amalgamation between the fact that this is a concert on someone's private land, but it's being shown by a national broadcaster that's funded by our taxation. And that is a big problem as well. It can't be ignored in the same way as a concert that just takes place in someone's field where somebody says some stupid stuff and nobody else need hear about it. The BBC has been the one broadcasting the very language and incitement that we're talking about here. So all of that's in it.
Yeah, and something that is also truly scary and disgusting about this whole situation is the fact that he isn't now talked about because he said free Palestine. He is talked about because he said death to the IDF. And anybody who is praising him, anybody who is, and we have people in the chat praising him, the same kind of trolls that do so also, they are praising the fact that he is calling death to the IDF. This is not simply, he is pro-Palestinian, he's our guy. No, this guy is actually calling for violence. This is what we want. We want violence against Jews. This is what we're calling for. Something Razi sent me before the show is, so there is this guy, Femi, apparently the British people know him. He became famous when he was like anti-Brexit or something. He posted on his page recently, there was this car that had a license plate, something like 7 IDF, and he's posted this with, should I slash his tires? And some people started arguing against him, but he started defending himself, saying, obviously, I don't know if the guy actually supports the IDF, but he got that car last year, so he got it after the UN declared the IDF were committing genocide, so it actually have to be clinically clueless not to know he has a terrorist organization on his car. And this is the exact same thing of Nazi Germany, right? It's, well, you might not be practicing Jew, but you're associated with Jews, your mother was Jewish or your father was Jewish, that is enough for you to get killed. And in this guy's scenario, that is enough for you to get your tires slashed. But where does it stop? Like, if you agree that violence, either property violence or actual violence against people based on their association is okay, when does it stop? You already gave up the principle. You already said violence is okay. You already said you do not wish to live civilly with people. You do wish to hurt and kill them. And
Well,
yeah.
carry on, carry on.
No, I just wanted to bring him also his sort of like justification that the UN declared IDF were committing genocide. I'm not sure even what he's referring to. I'm not sure when UN has ever said sort of like directly. I don't know what it even means for UN to say something because it's a giant freaking thing. I have no idea what he would even mean by that. But yeah, that also plays into the fact of these organizations, international organizations, sort of citing each other to basically justify either violence against Israel or actions against Israel.
Yeah, and of course they make up facts according to what suits them at the moment. Even the accusation, oh, the UN said that Israel is committing genocide. Well, no, that's bollocks. This never happened. Even the UN hasn't said that. But yeah, I mean, these little pricks are actually effectively they're just little wannabe fascists. You know, fascist or communist is the same. It's the same scum of the earth, isn't it? They want to use violence in order to force their ideas because, of course, their ideas are bollocks. They don't stand up to scrutiny. They are not logical, and they're not ideas made and fit for life on Earth, really. So every time they try and make an intellectual point or a point according to logic, wave is gonna fall apart because all they go by is feelings. All they go by tribalist recognition. This is my flag. This is my people, and those kind of stuff. So they haven't got an argument in favor of the Palestinian cause. First of all, because there is a Palestinian, never been a Palestinian. There isn't a Palestinian ethnicity. All it is a political party against the Jews, effectively. So, but do they ever come out and start condemning Hamas or the people who are still holding their hostages after over 600 days? You never hear them being controversial, as you mentioned earlier on, and come out and say, well, Hamas should return the hostages. No, you never hear them. You're not going to hear them. That's too controversial because it goes beyond what their little brains have been told. As I mentioned earlier on, their wide open mind is open to everything that sounds intelligent or clever, but actually they lack the kind of active mind that is required for you to be a free individual, for you to make your own judgment and evaluate what you see out there in the real world. They refuse to do that because they prefer to be filled with thought, pre-digested ideas from somebody who wears the same colors. And then they act according to those orders, which is exactly what the brown shirts did, which is exactly what the Chinese automatons do, which is exactly what the Russian did during the Soviet era. So what do you expect?
And the modern version of it is simply the parroting of these rhyming slogans, isn't it? That's how these things enter the wide open mind that Mark is referring to there. It's the second-handed nature of it, isn't it? It's the fact that they're virtue signaling within their safe zones, and you know they're just repeating what others say without challenge, without considering what those things mean. And that's at the heart of what you're seeing on display here. I mean, as I said before, this is a representation of the culture, and for anyone to understand how we move from where we are now to a proper state of free speech would need to not be suggesting that violent language is the way you start with it, but that you understand with the philosophical base needed to understand why free speech is necessary. And to work through all of those things first and within the culture in order to get to a point where you then have the laws that are necessary to uphold the individual rights that allow people to express themselves. But all of that is a million miles from where we are right now. And sadly, this is a sad indictment of where the culture is in the UK. And of course, it ends up representing the UK. People end up thinking that this is what people within Britain think. and many do, far too many. And of course, the education system has been designed to politicize everything, to make everything as superficial and facile as possible, in order for people to decide which colours they're going to attach their views to without any understanding, and therefore just parrot them out and hope somebody else parrots them out as well. And large numbers create a larger assertion of truth that is then taken to be a validation of truth when it's not.
So we'll start wrapping up, but first let me remind people that tomorrow the Daily Objective will be live in Boston on stage. Link to that is in the description. You still have time to sign up, so make sure to do so. The seats are limited, as well as make sure to sign up for our newsletter, because any event that is happening, anything that we are planning, if you are on the mailing list, you'll know about it. One more thing with that. So tomorrow we will be doing the Daily Objective, since it will be live here from Boston, but it's going to start 1 hour later than usual. So that's 6:30 p.m. UK time, which is 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Now, and there's going to be one more live stream before, where there'll be an announcement, and one more live stream after that, which one that one will be members only. So make sure to become a YouTube member and a website member to be able to watch that. That will be interview with Zoltan Sendes, the writer of The Objectivist Guide to the Galaxy. So with that, last thoughts from me would be that when it comes to comparisons with the 1930s, it has to be remembered that both when it comes to Hitler comparisons or when it comes to 30s comparisons, the fact is it didn't just happen in a vacuum that Jews suddenly started being put in concentration camps. It starts with anti-Semitism. It starts with looking the other way when crime against Jews is being committed. It starts with apologizing for or basically allowing anti-Semitic actions to happen and not confronting it. And that culture, if it gets to be alone, if it gets to stay, if it is not challenged, will eventually turn into Holocaust. And what we are seeing already, the violence against Jews everywhere, the sort of general hatred of Jews and hatred of Israelis. Think back either the Amsterdam or the Eurovision in Malmo, where whenever the Israeli representative was shown, she was automatically booed because of her association with the Jewish state. So that has to be confronted. With that, Marco, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
Yeah, we must remind people that the freedom of speech is the freedom to use your mind, your freedom to think. It's the implementation of your freedom to think. And of course, if your mind is so damaged by the current education system, if you are too lazy to try and be active and evaluate the facts according to your mind without relying on somebody else's fact or some mystical revelation, well, of course, you will be in favor of profanity laws, and you will be in favor of sort of hate laws that effectively stop somebody else making a statement that you don't like, because you don't care about freedom at that point. If you're not free to think, you don't care, because your orders will come from somebody else. You don't need freedom of speech because you're not free to think.
I think in terms of the Glastonbury thing, one other fact I wanted to throw in was the fact that they're having later on in the event, they were having somebody speak from Palestine Action. That's the same organization that is in the process of being proscribed as a terrorist organization following their damaging of military aircraft at a base in Oxfordshire here in the UK. To pretend that all of this is a surprise to either the people who run the festival or the people who show the festival, i.e. the BBC, is of course patent nonsense. It's been known throughout, and it's no surprise as a result of that. But it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again. And of course, it's that incremental nature of the repetition of this sort of thing, which is what normalizes it and makes people freer and freer to go further and further when it comes to threatening Jews in the UK and across the world. And that's where the danger comes.
Absolutely. And with that, Razi also reminds me that Michael Kaufman won't be on tomorrow on the Daily Objective. He was scheduled to be, but unfortunately he won't be able to attend. But instead, Jar Reichel will be joining us. So make sure to join us for that. Again, link to sign up is in the chat and in the description. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.